This is the Board of Assessment Appeals special meeting on Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022. Paulette Kuzo.
Here.
Carol Langland.
Present.
Katie Gutson.
I'm here.
Colleen Daly.
I am here.
Kathleen Griffin. Oh, I see her, but I didn't hear her. Okay. Peter Rupert. I don't see or hear him. And Judy Zablack.
Here.
Okay, that concludes attendance.
Okay, thank you. Because I'm not sure that everybody knows Judy Zablack and Katie Gusson. Both were gracious enough to work with us to help us get the business done. And so I just want to make sure that we introduce them and made them feel welcome. So welcome, Katie and Judy. Katie's done this before. She was the chair for several years, and Judy was served last year with us. So it's good to have you both back. All right, so now to continue on, one of the things that I thought we had an issue with, I know we had an issue with, not that I think it, I know we had an issue with last year, was some pretty strong disagreements among board members when it came to appraisals and appraisers. There came to be split between people who believed that we should weigh heavily the appraisals that came in for appeals, and also, value the appraiser's work because of their educational background, their training, the standards that they practice by, and all that. So, but that seemed to be something difficult for everyone to understand. So I thought we'd have Greg Lane, who's been an appraiser, in Fairfield quite some time, talk to us about a little bit about, what the appraiser does, his background, what the appraiser does, why they choose the comps they choose, and to help us understand better and be able to feel comfortable with it, because it's really not our position or our place to be pulling apart people's appraisals and to be trying to outthink what the appraiser has done by providing our own comps. That's really inappropriate. I don't want to see that this year. So Greg, whenever you're ready, we're dying to hear what you have to say.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to just take the time to thank everyone for doing this and going through this endeavor. It could be thankless, but I'm thanking you as a fellow town person. So I did send out some handouts. One contained 4 sheets of paper, which is kind of a worksheet with the adjustments, which is kind of what Paulette was just talking about. Also, I did send just a little blurb about USPAP, which is the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, and it's just as exciting as it sounds, but it's basically, the rules and the regs for any kind of appraisal. I mean, not just real estate. It has to do with any kind of appraisal work, being it, watches or jewelry or antiques or anything, but most of it is geared towards real estate. And that's what we have to abide by. And it's hugely, it's very complicated, but, I just wanted to put it out there so anybody who wanted to take a look at it could. And then lastly, I did send a copy of my license with my qualifications, just giving you a little bit of my background. I'm not really sure where to start here, so I'll just kind of throw it out there and see if anyone has anything specifically for me. I know Kathleen seemed to be the one, who had most of the questions over the past years. Do you think she might show, or?
I think she will. She was having a little trouble getting out of work on time lately, so she should be joining us shortly.
Kathleen Griffin's here, but she's muted. Oh, now she's not.
Oh, okay. So, I gave this worksheet as a guide, all right? What we do is an art, and, you know, there aren't always right answers, wrong answers. It's highly subjective. So, you know, and there's always going to be differences of opinion. So, you know, it's hard to make a science out of it and say someone's right, somebody's wrong, because there's so many factors that are involved with trying to arrive at a value. You know, there's always room to find something to pick at. So hopefully this worksheet will help people out. What's really important is with this worksheet, I guess there's probably about 5 or 6 different scenarios, or more like 6 or 7, you know, from 0 up to like $5 million value-wise. What's really important when you do utilize this worksheet, the monetary value that's given in that worksheet is just for the building, all right? It doesn't have to do with the value of the land, so you have to separate those two, and that's really important because you're not going to adjust, you know, $200 a foot for a cottage down at the beach, even though it's going for $2 million, and vice versa in the other direction. So I don't know, has anybody even looked at this? There's a lot of data there, so it could be a little bit confusing, and hopefully I'm not making it harder for you.
Hi, Greg. It's Carol Langland. I found it very helpful. We've been asking for this for a long time as real estate agents, and for some reason, this is the first time that Linda and I are both setting our eyes on this in a long time. And I find it, you know, very enlightening, even for small things like, you know, a garage,
Fireplace.
an additional bay,
Yeah.
depending on the price point, goes from $5,000 up to $10,000, probably $15,000 if it's $1.5 million property. You know, so things like this are very helpful. I like the sheet. If anyone hasn't printed it out yet, I did forward it, and it is worth printing out at some point. Thanks.
And even, you know, if you're talking about garages, I mean, you can go anywhere from having a open space to a carport to an attached garage to a heated garage to, I mean, you have garages where, you know, each bay could be worth, you know, $50,000 because it's heated, it's below grade, you know, someone keeps their special cars there. I mean, there's a really wide variation, you know, with most anything, really. So it's just, you know, again, I'm glad that it's there to be used as just a guide, you know, just so the numbers aren't so different. You can just utilize it to make you feel more comfortable. That's what it's there for.
Greg, this is Paul Ecuzo. I have a question. So the numbers that we're talking about, like, you know, 15,000 for a garage, 30,000 for a garage or whatever, and it all depends on, you know, what it is. Those numbers, those numbers came from somewhere. It's not like you just picked them out of the air. And although the appraisal itself may be subjective, isn't there like a guide that you go by that says, okay, well, the appraisal can be from here to here. The garage can be worth this to this. You didn't just pick a number out of the air.
No, and I mean, if you want to, like at the very top of the sheet, this is also really important. It says that these adjustments are what people are willing to pay for them, not what the cost is. So, you know, even now, if someone builds a brand new house and, you know, they spend $2 million on it, it really might just be worth $1.2 million, maybe $1.5 million, because whoever, you know, is going to purchase that down the road may not like the features that this person put in there. They might, you know, so just because somebody spends, you know, $250 a foot doesn't mean they're going to get back $250 a foot. So, you know, it's kind of relative as to what the marketplace. I can tell you something very recent. Years in the past, pools didn't really mean a whole lot, in-ground pools. Some people didn't even like them. They would like fill them in. Since the pandemic, in the past 2 years, the value of pools have raised significantly. So something like that, just based upon the marketplace, that adjustment has changed significantly in the past 2 years. You know, pools have gone way up more in value. I'm making larger adjustments for, you know, for the pools, the pool houses, things like that, because people are making their own little compounds and they are willing to pay a premium for that feature. So things do change.
Greg, it's
Okay.
Judy Zablank. I've got a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
How often is that adjustment guide updated and
This
revised?
one is old. And, you know, with the cost of everything going up in value, you know, they probably should be updated. What I would recommend, there is a booklet out there which gives, trying to think, using the cost approach, it tells you pretty much how much everything costs in different parts of the country. So like if you want to build a house on the East Coast, it's, you know, going to cost you more than, let's say, building something out in the Midwest. It's on the tip of my tongue. It's the cost approach. Hold on. That is the booklet that does tell you up to date all the costs. Marshall and Swift, that's what it's called. Write that down. Marshall and Swift cost analysis, and they do update that every year. What I'm giving you here isn't so much what everything costs. It's more, you know, what the buyer is willing to, you know, pay more or less for these features. So I haven't updated it, but you kind of do it on your own based upon the marketplace and based upon where you are. Certain features have more value in different parts of the country. So, you know, in that respect, it does change.
Thank you very much, Greg. I've got another question for you.
Okay.
You know, before I forget, I do want to make a statement. I absolutely respect your business and your professionalism, as well as all of the appraisers, because it's really a difficult job, and you were regulated so heavily by the state to make sure that everything is done properly. And I know that's got to be a little burden on top of everything else. And I just wanted to say thank you, and I respect what you do.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Judy. No, it's, when I started, you know, 30 plus years ago, my job was actually fun. And the banks have just taken all the fun out of it. And, you know, the art of appraisal, they've tried very hard, and they're still trying very hard to make it a science. So, and it isn't a science. I mean, there are parts of it that are a science, but in general, you know, you have to, you know, gather your data, analyze it, make your adjustments, and come to a reasonable conclusion based upon what data you have, you know. And it isn't like we all have access to the same data, so it's a question of, you know, trying to get the best data and then make your adjustments from there. So it's a challenge, that's for sure. You know, especially when a house lists for 1.2 and it sells for 1.6, and they want to finance 1.6, and it's like, okay, this is going to be a fun one.
All right. Hey, Greg, one other thing. Speaking about adjustments, now I'm looking at this 4-page guide that you I'm so grateful that you included that. I think we all are. And I'm looking at things, just for an example, let's say a bath, right? So for a 500 to 750K house, a half bath, 5,000, a full bath, 10,000. What happens
Yeah.
when that extra half bath is not really up to par, or that extra full bath is over the top amazing? Are you stuck by those numbers, or is that like a general and then you plus and minus from that?
Um, well, I mean, when a house, let's say, has 2.5 baths, and they're basically, if one is trashed, one's been totally updated, you'd make that adjustment under the condition section of the appraisal. And even that, I mean, that's when things get even stickier. Trying to determine, the remodeling of the kitchen and or the bathrooms and to the quality of that, and what's the difference between your comp and your subject. I mean, that's where things get really gray, because there could be such a wide variation, and I just try and keep things as simple as you can. I was here now, I'm doing a sale up in Sandy Hook, and this house has been rehabbed, and it's difficult when you read MLS sheets and you listen to the agent's remarks, and you have to try and determine, has this comp really been fixed up? Is the realtor just pulling your leg? Has the bathroom really been remodeled, or did they just put a carpet down on the floor? And so it's difficult to determine that. But to answer your question, if a bath hasn't been updated, or if it has, you would make that adjustment under the condition of the property. And then also, if you're talking about the quality, let's say of the remodel, there's another section in the appraisal report. It's called quality of construction, and it goes anywhere from a Q1, which is a quality 1, like the best it could be, down to a Q6, which is basically like a paper shack probably. But, there's wide variations, as everyone knows, in the quality of the materials used. You could have lino on the floor, you could have hardwood, you could have, granite, you could have marble. There's so many variations in, countertops and cabinets and flooring. You would also utilize that part of the appraisal to determine just what kind of the quality of construction, just like it says on the appraisal report.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Hopefully
Hi,
it
Greg,
didn't.
it's Carol.
Hi, Carol.
I have actually 2 questions. The first one has to do with bedrooms. So I see baths on here, but I don't see bedrooms. And I was just curious if we had apples to apples, the same square foot, 4,000 square foot ranch, large rambling ranch, and one has 3 bedrooms and one has 4 or 5 bedrooms, but they're the same square footage. How do you, or do you adjust, because in my mind there's more value for bedrooms, but
Right.
Since the square footage is the same on the comps, so where do you account for that? Or do you not?
Yeah, it depends. I typically don't make adjustments for a bedroom count unless it's warranted. Again, typically, if there's more bedrooms, it's larger square footage, and if you make an adjustment, it's like a double adjustment, because you're already adjusting for the square footage. You don't want to adjust again for the extra bedroom. So typically, yeah. I don't.
Okay.
If it's the same square footage, it's a tough call, because sometimes what they call a bedroom could be like a little sewing room. It could be, in general, I don't make an adjustment. If I feel that it's warranted, I will. But I have to have usually some other kind of ammunition to help me justify making that adjustment for the extra bedroom. And you really don't run into that unless you get into smaller, like a little condo. It's got 2 bedrooms. It's got 1 bedroom. So you do want to try and find other 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms. Once you get up into the 3, 4 bedroom range, most of your comps are like that. And same with the bigger houses, 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms. Typically, you don't have to make an adjustment. But if it's a ranch, the same square footage, and if it's a different bedroom count, you may need to make a bedroom adjustment.
Okay. And my second, thank you. My second question is more related to the appeal process. I happened to just peruse the previous summaries from last year, and I did notice your name several times, and, got me wondering if you could just address, when a resident comes to you or one of your colleagues, in their mind, they want to do the appeal. Obviously you don't just take people's money to pay for this appraisal and to represent them if you didn't think it was valid, I'm guessing. So do you turn people away? And what's your process for representing someone for an appeal?
Okay, that's a good question. I turn away more than I take. And even more so now in the past 2 years, because I haven't been as busy this past 2 years as I've been in probably 20 years. So you're less reluctant to take on a case, if you already have a pretty full caseload. But if something's justified and you feel like someone's, I won't use the word taking advantage of, but when the town does a reval, it's a mass revaluation. They don't go and do an appraisal on every house, and they do the best they can. There's going to be mistakes, being it with the land value, being it, with the improvements, being it if there's 2 acres, maybe 1 acre is all wet. They don't know that. So, everything's not going to be perfect. There's going to be houses that aren't being appraised properly, and those should be pointed out, and that should be corrected. There are many times people call me, and I call it back, and I say, be quiet for the next 5 years because they have you under the market. You know what I mean? So that also happens. But in general, if I will actually comp out a house before I call somebody back and tell them yes or no. And if it's even close, and when I say close, I mean if I can't save them $100,000 market value, it isn't really worth it to do, because then you're down to $70,000 with the assessment. You got the mill at, let's say, 25. So if you can't save them a couple $1,000s a year, it really isn't worth them going through that process. And it isn't worth it for me to go through it and then have somebody shoot me down. So I'd rather have a good case with good comps and be able to justify my number. So hopefully that wasn't
Thank you.
too wordy for you.
Nope. Thank you.
Okay.
Paulette?
Greg, it's Helene Daly.
Hi,
I'm
Helene.
kind of going through this with an appraisal that I'm talking to the appraiser right now about a property I'm selling in Milford. How much weight do you put on an exceptionally finished lower level? I mean, I know typically we don't include that in the square footage, but if it's, like I said, a really exceptionally done lower level that is a full walkout with a dedicated bedroom and a full bathroom, I mean, how much value do you add to that?
Every case, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
I mean, every case is different. Below grade area, Fannie Mae requires us to value that differently. It is a gray area as to what's below grade, what's not below grade. You get into some of these splits and things like that, and it's a challenge. But if you have a really high quality lower level, you can value that at pretty close to, if not the maybe not the same as above grade living area, but you can come pretty close to it because, you know, there's some really nice finished lower levels, and but you have to categorize it separately than the above grade area. That's important. You need to create a separate category for that finished basement area. You can't just throw it in to the gross living area that's above grade, because then you wind up getting scolded. But, you know, there's really no limit as to what the adjustment for the square footage for the basement could be. Like you said, it depends upon the quality of it, you know, how old it is. Having a walkout is certainly advantageous. So, you know, it is a asset, you know.
Yeah, because in this case, I mean, the dedicated bedroom and the whole huge living area is all above grade. It's just the front part of the house that is, you know, below grade, and then the whole back is a walkout. So, I mean, would you say that's like a percentage of the square footage that you would attribute to the overall?
Again, it isn't my guidelines. These are Fannie Mae guidelines. So if you walk in the front door and if that living area isn't, you know, like right there in the foyer, right there with you, if you have to walk down the stairs, typically that would be below grade, and you would have to categorize it as that. It gets tricky though, because, you know, some of the towns, even when they do the field cards, they throw in the basement. You go to Stanford, they got the basement in there, and it's really tricky. And the towns do that on purpose because they want to make it seem like there's more square footage than there is. But in general, if you can, as long as the comps that you pick and you're consistent with your adjustments, you know, with your comps, you're okay. But if you start, you know, mixing and matching finished basement and above grade area, that's a big no-no.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't know if that helps you or not, but.
No, it does.
And the big thing is, you know, just trying to keep Fannie Mae happy, staying on top of USPAP. You know, like every 2 years they have new rules, they change stuff. I got to start taking those in April again. You know, it's a 16-hour course, and you know, it's not fun. I'll tell you right now. So, but they do drill into you, you know, these concepts and these standards and these, you know, and you need to take tests, and you can't just take the course and just, I mean, you need to pass these tests, and they don't make them easy. So, and leave alone, you know, what has to be done now to even qualify to sit, you know, to be a certified residential appraiser. That means single family homes, you know, condos, up to a 4-family. I mean, you need to have a 2-year college degree just to even sit to be a certified residential. Leave alone all the courses and all the hours. And then what the hard part is, finding someone like me to train you, to sponsor you, because that means somebody like me, I have to be able to give them work. If I have to feed myself first too, you're very reluctant to bring somebody on because you don't want to try and give them work, but then take it away from yourself. So it's kind of vicious. And that's why there aren't many people entering the field, because they've made the qualifications so difficult.
Any other questions for Greg? Oh, okay. Well, Greg, thank you very much for your time. Oh,
So I have
yes?
a question, Alex. Can you guys hear me now? It's Kathleen. Sorry, I had a problem with my audio.
Hi,
Can
Kathleen.
you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Greg. Nice
I can hear you. Hi, Kathleen. How are you?
to see your phone. So,
Good.
quick question for you. I was listening to
Yeah.
one of the old Board of Finance meetings the other day. So I know when people take, oh, the dog's coming in, tax appraisals, they go on contingency. Do appraisers ever take appraisals on contingency, or is it a flat fee? And what's just the range of a fee for a standard appraisal in Fairfield? Is it like $300 or is it $1,000? I'm just curious to know, like, you know, how that all works. I know some of the appraisers will actually put their invoice in with the packet. So I'm just wondering, you know, is it?
It's really easy. If you're a certified appraiser with the state of Connecticut, it is against the law to do an appraisal on a contingency basis.
Okay.
And if you do one on a contingency basis, you're certainly allowed to do whatever you want, but you cannot and will not be a certified appraiser from the state of Connecticut. You can have the qualifications. Like, I could not renew my license, and I have a Bachelor of Science in Finance. So, you know, I'm a certified general real estate appraiser, which allows me to do commercial, industrial. So I could not renew my license. I could go to, you know, all the big industrial properties, commercial properties, and do the same thing that these people do now. You go in there, I can challenge the taxes and not charge them anything until I get something off. But, you know, they need to bring you, you know, the guts. They need to, you know, tell you why this property isn't worth what it is. And then as far as fee-wise, fees, you know, they all vary. Some people charge by the hour. Some people charge a flat fee based upon the value of the property. You know, myself personally, I start with an engagement letter, and I get a retainer from the client, and that way I usually cap it out at a certain amount. You do properties on Sasco Hill, you know, it's going to be a couple $1,000s, easy. You know, Pequot Harbor, Sasco, you know, most of those properties, some on Fairfield Beach, you know, those are going to be bigger numbers because it just takes more time. It's harder. You know, in general, for a single-family home, I mean, most people with a house under, you know, worth less than 500 or worth less than 6 or 750, it's not usually worth it for them to even do the appeal, because by the time they go through everything, and if they wind up getting shot down, then, you know, it just, fee-wise, it's all over the place, and it would be hard for me to say what the standard fee is. I don't really, you know, I can tell you what I do, and what the banks pay for bank work is different than tax appeals, because when I do tax appeal work, that work is, you know, possibly going to court. So I charge a premium for any tax appeal work that I do, knowing that appraisal, you know, could wind up making me be on the stand and having to testify.
Okay, thanks. I just have one other question too. So
Yeah, go ahead.
I think, Judy can answer this, or Paulette too, because I think sometimes when we do question the appraisals, usually I think the two instances that have come up that I can remember is one that the house is actually sold in the reval period. So, you know, we had one from last year. I went back and listened to a couple of the appraisals from last year. We had one that sold in like August of 2020, and the ask amount on the appraisal was, you know, a decent amount less than what the purchase price was. So trying to think how to frame my question around that, but I guess if it sells in the reval period and you don't use it as a comp for yourself, like how else, you know, we often find those, and that comes up later on in the process when we're deliberating because it's not mentioned in the appraisal. So, or some of them don't. So if you were doing that, how would you, you know, let the board know that they overpaid, or like, you know, so that we wouldn't have those questions about the property. Or for example, another house sold on the street, very similar shape and size, and it wasn't included in the appraisal. And so I think in our deliberations, you know, like I said, that's what tends to come up, and whether there's anything, you know, appraisers can do to give us more of a narrative. I know Michael Gold sometimes has a full-page narrative in his appraisals that I find very helpful when we get some of his. So I'm just wondering, is there a standard for that? Are you required to include those, or it's up to the appraiser, and, how do you handle those two situations?
Typically, it depends on the lender. It depends on the purpose of the appraisal. I know if it's a Michael Gold appraisal, it has to be a pretty substantial piece of property, and I'm sure that he gives a pretty thorough narrative as to why he chose what he chose. Or what I do find with some lenders, obviously we have to use multiple listing to find comps. What we do, it comes down to your search parameters. So when you do your search parameters, and everyone's done this, when they're doing a CMA or whatever, when I do it personally, I put in my subject property, and I don't put in any parameters being at price. I do go within 1 year, and I go within a half mile and see all the properties that have sold in the past 365 days, within a half mile radius of my subject. So that way it kind of gives you a parameter of what the highs and the lows are within that, that proximity. If you don't get that many sales, you bring it to a mile. So my point to you is, when you finalize your search process, you can print out a copy of those comps that you considered. And sometimes the lender will ask you to make that part of the report. So I think that's something that you might be looking for. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's just sometimes, we have a list of all the sales from the reval period. We have a spreadsheet of them. So often what I'll do, others may do the same, I just type in the street, or I type in the neighborhood code, because we organize, our land values are based largely on neighborhood code with some site adjustments and things. So that's what I do. So when a house pops up 3 doors down on, on Hirsch or Old Orchard, whatever, it's very difficult, as a board, often those questions will come up, like, why isn't this comp in there? Instead of, they did pick these ones, why didn't they pick this one? So the question becomes, do we have to just assume that you didn't include it for a reason, or perhaps it was missed? So I think, that's when the questioning happens in the deliberation process, not so much in the hearing, because often we don't have the paperwork for the hearings ahead of time, right? So we can't ask, we can't do the research prior to the hearing. So
what I can say is this, and I have done the same thing myself. Like, over the years, when you do your search process, I have found that it's detrimental to put in any kind of areas, being at schools or being at, if you're down by the beach, you put in Fairfield Beach, because sometimes people don't put that in there. And if you use that category, you're going to lose some sales. Same with the schools. You're better off not using any sub areas, not using any schools, just use a straight proximity from your subject and keep the parameters at a minimum, because you don't want to miss a sale, just like you're saying. And, just one little box, which is not checked or is checked, can make a difference in that whole search process. So I have found that, don't limit, don't put on too many blinders in your search process, because you may wind up missing something. In general, you don't miss it. I have found times that I missed something and I wound up kicking myself. But I think that's how I learned that, you don't do the sub area, with the schools up by Osborne Hill School, or you don't do something that is categorized as university area, because you're going to miss out. And I just find it better to leave those categories if you're going to refine your search process later on in time. But when you first, start looking, you don't want to miss anything. So that way, it just kind of makes it easier for everybody because they can't go back and say, why didn't you use this sale? So hopefully that answers your question.
I think, this is Kathleen, I think that's exactly what
Yeah.
our question is sometimes, why was this one missed? And
Yeah.
that's often,
Yeah, and-
we find them ourselves, it's like, okay, well, why didn't he include this one? There's no explanation at the end. If it's sold in a reval period and it's not on the list or they're asking for less money, why? In other words, it's not so much about what's there often, it's about what's not there. So I'm just wondering, is there a way to improve for us as, as a BAA member so that communication gets better between us and the appraiser?
Paulette.
I would
I
think,
just want to,
go ahead.
oh, sorry, Greg. One of the things that Greg may not be aware of, and this does come into play with this particular topic, a couple of things. The first thing is, say, well, why didn't this come up? Because it's in the neighborhood. Remember that what the realtors and Greg maybe might be using is traditional neighborhoods that are well-established and that correspond with the zoning maps. We don't have that. There are people who believe that the assessor's choice to just extend a neighborhood where it doesn't belong makes it that neighborhood, and it doesn't when it comes to sales, because people don't think that way, and they shouldn't. So maybe we think something is missed, but really it doesn't belong in that neighborhood in the first place, so it really isn't missed. It doesn't belong with this group of houses, and that's what I've been arguing about since last year, but that seems to sometimes fall by the wayside. He may be using something completely different than we're using, and it's always been my feeling that yes, we should review those appraisals and make sure that they make sense, and that they seem to be above board, even though these guys practice a higher standard than most of us could. I think that when we get into trouble is when we start to think that we know better than the appraiser about what comp is the right one to use. I think that when we look at the appraisal, we need to look at what did he give us? Does it make sense? And then if it does, it needs to be looked at as, okay, this is a fair and valid appraisal, and not go trying to find other things to rebut what the appraiser has done. And that was the whole purpose of having Greg, one of the reasons Greg should be talking to us, to help us understand that this is what they do and why. We don't really need to be going through and making our own appraisals up.
I'd like to chime in and just say one thing and piggyback on what Paulette said. There could be a street and one part of the street is worth a lot more money than the next part. Right? One side of the street is worth more money than the other side. And it doesn't have to be that you have lakefront property, but one side of the street is more desirable. Once you get to a particular stop sign, the properties go down in value. Okay, so we as realtors know that, but the assessors and the little area neighborhood codes are not going to get that. They're not going to catch it. So that's why the appraiser does know that, because that's the appraiser's business. That's the realtor's business. That's why we know it. So that's why I think some comps, even on the same street, even if everything looks similar, may not be actually similar to the property.
And that's why the human element is so important in this process, because it's not just numbers on a page, it's not just codes. It's, the valued experience of people who have actually been in the homes and understand, how one side of the street can be different from the other side of the street because one side might have power lines behind it. That's a perfect example, Judy. And, it's the human element that I think in the end is the, deciding factor. And we're fortunate enough now to have several realtors on the board who have been in these properties and can really, fine tune this process.
I agree. And then I think somebody asked me as far as using comps and if like someone purchased a price for, purchase a house for 500 and the town came in at, let's say, 475, but the person says, that the house, wasn't really worth what they paid for it. And, that's a little bit of a more sticky situation. But, if these days, it's very easy to say that people overpaying for things. So it's certainly a different day and age, but, you know, people are certainly paying premiums, and it's a problem for us now too, because there's a lot of cash deals too, and these cash sales just kind of skew everything else, and it just makes the marketplace, you know, more difficult to kind of read. So, you know, there's a lot of factors that go into trying to find a fair market value, and it's not perfect. It isn't a science. You're not going to get every perfect comp every time. So, you know, everyone does the best they can with the knowledge, the expertise that they have, and you know, hopefully in the end we can just make things fair. That's my whole thought process.
Good thought. Thank you, Greg. If there's nothing else, then I want to thank you for your time and for the information that you've given us, and we look forward to working with you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, and again, thank you for volunteering your time, and everyone appreciates everything you're doing.
Thank you,
You're
Greg.
very welcome.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay,
Thank you.
have a good evening. Okay, thank you. Nice talking to you.
You too.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Okay. Moving along, we just heard Greg from an appraisal standpoint, but I also wanted to have a realtor give us their perspective from their side of how, because there is a difference between what the appraiser does and what the realtor does when we value properties. I thought it would be good to hear both, because we do take into account, they sometimes, you know, appellates sometimes come with a broker's price opinion, though it doesn't have the same weight as the appraisal, as we know from looking at the handbook, it does have some weight. So we've asked Linda D'Amato, who has been in real estate for, I don't even know how many years, at least 20, was the manager at William Ravis for a long time, and is now the manager at William Pitt in Fairfield or Southport. So we've asked her to share her knowledge with us and her process for valuing properties. Linda, are you there?
I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
Okay.
Okay. Our process is really very similar to what Greg does for the most part. I think the big difference, or, you know, where we start really is with square footage of the house and making that 20% square footage adjustment. So we use that 20%, and I think you can see it in what I had written. And then we look at market area, and then we also look at that geographic area, or a mile around the house, just to see what that brings in as far as the comparables, and determine that. But I think that the biggest difference between what we do and what an appraiser does is that we have kind of the local expertise, the boots on the ground, realtors that know what areas are hot, what aren't, what the clients are looking for. We have more emotion in it than what an appraiser has. He's going on an adjustment worksheet. Many times we're going off of what we think is the value of the differences, meaning if they have a $100,000 pool where Greg may be adjusting it, I don't know what his number is, we could be adjusting at a much higher number. So, you know, there's much more emotion in it, but it's really relatively the same. You know, we just go off of a different process. We're looking at more replacement costs than actually the adjustment cost, and really kind of factoring in what you know what we're looking at as far as the neighborhood specific. I don't know really what I could add to what he's saying, because he's really head on as far as what we do. The process is the same. It's just emotional versus a non-emotional process. So we could be actually higher in number than the appraiser sometimes. If we do have an unusual property, we did quite a bit this past year, we always hire an appraiser to come in to value the property. We can't count on the fact that every offer, although we're seeing a tremendous amount of cash right now, we have to really factor in that there may be a mortgage and we need it to appraise as well. So we do rely on the appraisers to come in and help us out with those unusual properties. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's anything else that I can add. He really went through it all.
You did.
He really did. He's very thorough. And we've used Greg a lot. He does a really great job. Any other questions for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everything's been said.
Okay. All right, nobody has any other questions for Linda? So Linda, thank you for waiting. I know that Greg's presentation took longer than I expected, so I thank you for your patience and waiting, and thank you for your
Oh, please,
time.
don't be silly. No, you did a wonderful job explaining everything.
Okay,
All right, thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
Okay, now, where are we now? Okay, next is Russ with us? Russ, are you there?
I am.
Oh, good, okay. So Russ, you're up next. Let's see, what do we want to talk about? Okay, let's see. Oh, most importantly, the explanation of the review of field card lot line valuations, excuse me. Review of neighborhoods and the town. So if you could go over that part of the field card, that would be great.
I'm sorry?
I said if you can go over that part of the field card, that would be great.
Sure. I'll walk you through that, the bottom of the field card on the landline.
Yeah.
Does everybody have one?
I do.
I might be able to pull one up if you want me to do that.
Does anybody need a field card?
Yeah, I don't have one, so yeah, if you would pull one up, that'd be great.
Okay.
Let me see if I can join from my desktop and I will put one on the screen. Ooh, I had it. Where'd it go?
Peter, if you go to VGSI Fairfield, just click on your own property, and then your field card will be there. You can pull it up.
Oh, that's right. We have the PDF versions up there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just give you a caution on those. Those have not been updated. They are a static card. They were created last year and have not updated them yet this year.
This is Kathleen Ross. That was one of my questions, actually. Can we get them updated? Because they're pretty helpful to see where the adjustments and stuff are, especially since we had 650 at least changes last year. I don't know what else you changed. Is it something, you know, that you can do again?
Yeah, I'm going to look into that.
Okay, that'd be great. I know I would appreciate it. I don't know about everybody else, but I used it almost all the time last year because it just has a lot of information that, you know, and I wouldn't want to be looking at somebody who's a year old in case they appealed last year and we forgot that or whatever. At least that's in the card.
I did pull one up, so I'll set there.
Okay, is everybody set? Because I'm not going to be able to share my screen because I'm not the owner of the meeting.
Yeah, I was able to pull one up. I didn't know if you heard that.
Okay, so if everybody's got one up, I'll walk you through the bottom of the card. The first thing you have is a use code and a description that's driven off of that use code. Both of those are just descriptive of the property. They do not have any effect on value. And the same would hold true for zone. It is just informational. Land type we don't use. Land units is either in square footage or acreage. Typically, you'll see the first 2 acres in square footage, and any additional acreage would be in square, the first 2 acres are in square footage. Anything over that is in acreage. You have the unit price, which is derived from the size and the land curve, which I know we've had a lot of discussion about. And that is the influence factor. Site index. That can affect value. Typically, it does not. And that can be used to make adjustments for neighborhoods that have differences within them, or there's small pockets in a neighborhood. So it's not frequently used, but can be.
Ross, is that side index from 1 to 10?
The index goes from 1 to 9, and then there's some letter codes. Typically, you'll see C on a commercial. You might see on a excess acreage, you'll see an O for override, because we just priced that out at 100,000 typically.
Is 1 being the best and then it goes down, or is 1 the worst and then it goes up?
5 is a no adjustment. So if it's below a 5, it'll reduce the value. If it's above a 5, it will increase the value.
Okay.
What's next?
That has to do with value, not a number associated with a neighborhood.
No, it influences the value.
Okay.
The condition factor, again, typically that's a 1. If there's something unique about the property, you'll see an adjustment there. Most often that's going to reduce it for a location issue, a topography issue, shape, things like that. And usually there'll be a note to, a short note to kind of lead you to what that adjustment is for. That note is typically in the land section. It could also be in the notes section on the front of the field card also. Is
1 the standard, and then anything less than that means it's substandard? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's a multiplier. So you're going to multiply the value by that number. So if it's 1, it's going to be the same. If it's 0.50, it would be cut it in half. If it's 1.25, it would increase it by 25%. So it's just a straight adjustment.
Thank you.
Then you have the neighborhood code that determines the neighborhood adjustment that's been used. Residentials are numbers, and the commercials are most often letters. So you'll see something like a C1 or a C6. The 1 through 6s, they don't have any particular meaning other than where it's located. So they're not 1 being the worst, 6 being the best. Beyond that, there are some location adjustments used within a neighborhood. We've seen this on Fairfield Beach, where you'll have a different adjustment for the beach side versus the creek side, or if you get further up the beach, closer to the club, you won't have you'll have adjustment for being close to water but not on the water.
Do we have? I'm just going to back up a little bit here. Do we have a list of the neighborhoods and what number is assigned to those neighborhoods?
I can get that for you. I think that's been published. It might even be on the website, but I can send it out.
Yeah, this is Kathleen. If you go to fairfieldct.org/revaluation, I think, and go to the bottom of the page, there's a bunch of document, there's actually a drop-down box down there, and if you hit the drop-down box, in there is definitions for all of the codes that are on the card. So if you see like the PC4, so there's a table in there for location adjustment, there's a table in there for neighborhood codes, so it's slash revaluation down the bottom. We loaded them all up last year, so I just checked the other day because they're still there. So you just have to hit that drop-down arrow in the list of all the codes are down there, including the neighborhood codes. But I think it's in your spreadsheet, Ross, that you sent out, right? One of the sheets in that spreadsheet, like the 3rd or 4th Street, is also the neighborhood codes with the descriptions in them.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so it's in there too. Yep.
If you can't find it,
Paulette,
let me know and I'll send it out.
This is Paulette. I just want to point out to people who haven't seen the map with the neighborhoods on it, there's a list where it'll just tell you, you know, University is this number, Stratfield is this number. Or there's a map and it's color coded. And it shows you, you know, you could see like neighborhood 80 and it shows you where it is and what color that is. However, there's no streets on the map. So if you don't really know the town as well as maybe you think you do, or as maybe as you should or could, it makes it a little bit difficult to figure out like where something is. So the fact that the streets aren't in it to me is not a plus, but, and it's hard to, because of the way it's printed out, I've had it printed out, and because of the size of it, you can't really stick it up against another map that I had, any map that I have, and try to coordinate where the edges are, where the colors are, things like that. So it makes it a little bit hard to really use the map that way, which I like to do. That's just me. So I have some questions. So first of all, I have a question about why do we have neighborhoods that I never heard of before? For example, east of North Benson. Why do we have that instead of University? Because that used to be part of the University area.
Those are the descriptive names we put on them. There's no particular meaning behind the names other than to try to identify that area.
I understand that, but I guess my question is, let me ask it a different way. My question is, so that neighborhood used to be called the University area, just like the neighborhood below North Benson Road. And it got a new name. I don't understand the reason for the new name. And it also, there's a change in the neighborhood adjustment, which I'm not sure exactly what that is. I'm guessing that it has something to do with value because they're all different numbers. Maybe I'm wrong about that. So what?
I can tell you that there were several neighborhoods that had no names whatsoever when I got here. So I tried to put a name on them that would identify where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's really, it's as simple as that. There is still a university area. Neighborhood 73 that surrounds Fairfield U.
I understand that, but I guess, I also understand that there were some neighborhoods that didn't have names that should have been, I mean, we had names for them, it just wasn't clear. And I understand that. And now we have neighborhoods that we didn't have before, which in some ways is a good thing. I don't know if St. Mortar might be one of them, I can't remember, but that's been a neighborhood there forever. Everybody referred to it, but I don't think it was ever delineated as this is St. Mortar. I get it. But I don't understand why we changed the neighborhood from the university to east of North Benson when it's still, I mean, there's North Benson Road. One side of the street is one neighborhood, one side of the street is the other neighborhood. But I don't understand why we even did that when it was all one big university area to start with. I don't see the need for a change. That had a name.
Those two neighborhoods on either side did not change. They were in existence before the reval.
So Figler Road, Wormwood Road, Painter's Way, those were not called the university area before?
I don't know about specific streets. I mean, there might have been some changes along the perimeter, but in general, the university neighborhood, the neighborhood around Fairfield U has pretty much been intact, I think, for several revals.
So I wasn't on the board then. Helene might be able to tell me. I don't know. Kathleen was on it. Helene was on it. You know, I don't know how long that's been in place. But when I did it quite a few years ago, it was the university area, and I didn't see it change. And I also see that with the change in the name and the code number, the neighborhood adjustment numbers are not the same. What's the neighborhood adjustment number? What does that signify?
The neighborhood adjustment numbers change during a reval to develop the values and get the pricing model to produce the results and that we need. So those are changed all the time in a reval. That's what happens. But the neighborhood delineations in that area did not change. Again, some of the perimeter properties might have, I think they did. I'm not sure exactly which ones at this point, but again, the general neighborhood on either side of Fairfield U there has remained intact.
Okay, well then what, it remains intact from when it was changed. It wasn't always that way. So then what makes, so let me ask this about the neighborhood adjustment. So I live in a university area, and I don't remember what that neighborhood adjustment is. It might be 1.7, 1.70. I'm not sure. I think it is. And yet the neighborhood adjustment on, say, Tanaka Park is 1.55. So it's a smaller number. How does that affect the value? Or am I thinking that in the wrong? Am I thinking of that in the wrong way?
No, the smaller number produces a smaller value.
So
else
according to this, the way this is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just saying, all else being equal, the neighborhood adjustment, a smaller number will produce a smaller value.
Okay. So then I should, based on what you just told me, then what I've just learned is that Woods End Road off of Round Hill, which is an everyday street of mixed houses, nothing special about it, is worth more than Tanaka Park with its private association, special little rules and regulations that they have, and a tennis court available for residents' use. That value is less than mine when I have to go to a park to play tennis and there's nothing special about my street, nor do I have a homeowners association or anything else, nor do I have to tell anybody when I want to sell my house, nor do I have to get it approved. So I don't understand why that is valued less than where I live.
I'd have to dig a little deeper, Paulette. I just, I thought I was explaining the landline tonight.
Well, we're explaining the landline valuation is that whole section. That's why I'm asking.
But if you want me to delve into, a particular adjustment.
Well, no, I'm just trying to understand. I guess what I'm trying to understand is that this neighborhood that is called east of North Fenton is a large area, and some of it is no different in look, desirability, or anything else than where I live, which is the university area. Yet the landline adjustment, location adjustment is less. It's a smaller number. So I would guess that if you took my house and somebody else's house and put them together and said, okay, the one that's in the east of North Fenton neighborhood is going to be less valuable in some ways because the number's smaller. And I guess that's the part I'm having trouble with. Now, from the other
but you
side
have
of that,
to look at you should be looking at the total value that results on the entire card. That's what really matters. And does that or does that not produce a good result?
I've got a question.
You're looking at one component when, this is what I tell everybody, you need to focus on the total value. That's what ultimately matters.
Okay. Well, and
that's
I
what you guys are for.
But
if we got it wrong, then the board is there to fix it.
Okay, then I'll be fixing it, because if you took my house and someone just like it and looked at the values, I'm guessing, and I could be wrong, I'm guessing that the one in that other neighborhood is going to be, the whole total number is going to be less than mine because I have a higher number to start with. So I don't see how I cannot look at that and say something's wrong with that.
You'd have to do the comparison to know for sure.
Okay. And by the same token, the neighborhood where Tunsis Hill is, this east of North Fenton encroaches into Tunsis Hill. And so houses there that's the less expensive section in some ways in some of those streets, and yet there's a street there right next to one just like it, and yet those numbers are different, and that person in the wrong neighborhood is going to end up with a much higher number in their values, which then affects their taxes. So I think that's the problem I'm having with it, that I don't understand who did it, and I don't understand like how it's got to be like encroaching into other neighborhoods and changing things. You're saying it wasn't just done, but for however long it was done, it's not right, from my perspective. Fairfield Woods neighborhood does not belong up off of Jefferson Street by the Parkway. Yet, Casimir Drive off of Churchill Road is considered Stratfield, and that's further out. So that's what I'm not understanding. That the whole thing doesn't make sense to me, and I don't know about anybody else. I don't know what anybody else feels about it.
I've got a comment.
Anybody else have a? Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
Okay, yeah, it's Judy Zablack. So I've got a comment. I was listening to your conversation with Russ, and we're talking about this neighborhood adjustment. And for example, I'm looking at a field card, it's 1.3. And when in the course of your conversation, you were asking Ross about how he comes up with that. And Ross, what you said was that you changed that neighborhood adjustment is based upon the results that you need. What did you mean when you said that? The results that we need. That's what you said. What do you mean by that?
So we analyze all, right. So when we build the pricing model, we take the sales that we're using and build the model around all sold properties, the valid sales that we're using to develop the model. And we use a statistical analysis. We have statistical standards we need to meet. We drill down into different property types, different neighborhoods, just to see how that looks at a tighter resolution. And then the standard is set by the whole town, but we look at it in smaller subsections. So we develop the model to meet those standards. So that involves changing the pricing on houses, its depreciation tables, land values, all the different parameters that are within the system can and are adjusted to get the values to come up and to meet the standards.
Well, how do you know that the values need to come up? How do you know that?
Up or down.
Assuming that okay. So that's
up or
when you
down.
say, okay, all right. So that's what I wanted to clarify. Because when you say you're looking for the results that we need, what do we mean? What is it that we need? We need to get the price up as high as possible. We need to get the price to the proper place where it should be. We need to get the neighborhoods in the proper place where they should be. Not, have a particular neighborhood, a house deemed in a particular neighborhood when it's nowhere near it. So those kind of things, and that's going to affect the neighborhood adjustments. So I think that once we get the neighborhoods in the right spot with the right streets, I think that's going to help a lot. And I would love to see a street list for each neighborhood.
So let me clarify. When I say need is based on getting the value to the proper level, whether that's an increase or a decrease. We're not looking to just increase because we want to increase values. That's not what we do.
So, hi, this is Helene. I have a question. Since we were talking about university, it's a large area, and now I'm hearing that there are different neighborhood codes to, different parts of the university. Does that preclude us from using a comp in a different neighborhood with a different neighborhood code? I mean, if there's different values attached to the neighborhoods, so we can go outside of the code, neighborhood, even though it's the same university?
Yes.
This is Kathleen. Judy, I heard your question before. I think, Ross, you gave a better explanation, not better, but you gave an explanation last year about East and North Benson. I think it was in one of our deliberations, or maybe it was some other place. But just I looked back at the codes from 2015. So I think neighborhood 70 was Mill Hill to Mill Plain. And then last year you guys broke out, or MBS broke out University as a separate neighborhood because it was such a large neighborhood. So we ended up with neighborhood 70 and 73. So now we have Mill Hill separate from, or Southport separate from Mill Plain. I think the problem you mentioned with east of North Benson was that it's such a large number of properties that you struggled with the model because you need your model to work for the sales that fall in that neighborhood code. So you kept adjusting the land values and trying to figure out with the sales how to get it so that the adjustment was, whatever the percentages, was correct for the sales in that neighborhood code. Because there's some neighborhood codes like 66 down at the beach, there's very few properties in that neighborhood code. But some of them are huge. Some have 3,000, 3,500 properties in the neighborhood code. I don't have my numbers right, but they're much, much larger areas. So it's much harder to get the value there. And I think you talked about starting the 2025 reval way ahead of time so that you could take big neighborhoods like east of North Benson and break it into smaller areas of homes so that the model would work better over time. Am I accurate in remembering that's where you and Mike struggled with east and North Benson?
Yeah, that was one neighborhood that we spent quite a bit of time with. And I have spoken about, starting the reval in advance because it is a reval. It is our 10-year cycle where we will need to visit all the houses. Starting it early will just give us more time to get that accomplished and process the data.
I have another thought, and I would just like to give you like a different example. All right, so we're doing all these adjustments, and you've got to make these adjustments work in these different neighborhoods. I get that, but let's look at it a little differently. Let's suppose you're a contractor, and I think everybody will understand this scenario. You're a contractor and you're doing the kitchen and the floor is unlevel and you've got to put a couple of shims in there in order to get the cabinet to fit in properly, right? If you have to put 1 or 2 shims in there, not a big deal, it's okay. But at the point where you've got to put 5 or 6 shims in there, you better do something with the floor. In other words, when I'm saying do something with the floor for the kitchen, for the contractor in the kitchen, maybe there needs to be a different neighborhood if you got to make such a big adjustment. That's what I'm saying. Does everybody get that? Does that make sense to anybody?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, this I don't know if you remember last year too, we struggled with some of the properties in the East and North Benson neighborhoods, and particularly the ones that were over closer to Tungus Hill, because they were coming in and they were clearly they were overvalued for that neighborhood because of the way that the mass appraisal works with a large number of properties. So it was appropriate that those were coming in, and we were seeing, I don't know, I can't remember if it's not Berwick or Berwyn, there's a couple streets over there, that were definitely too high. And part of that was just because it's such a large model and it's not going to get it perfect for such a big area. So that's kind of why we're here. And that's also, something to look at. Hopefully if some of those get broken up a little bit better going forward, it's going to be helpful for, the people on the low end, right? Because they're the ones who are going to be overappraised, and it's going to get us, better on the higher end, because those people are going to be under in that, when you have an average amount for a big area. So hopefully some of those are coming back this year, especially because they can't afford to hire, probably most of them can't afford to hire an appraiser to come in, but those are the ones, that I would like to see come in.
So Kathleen, in that instance, did you actually change the neighborhood code on that field card?
Kathleen, no, I think I don't think we've done that just because the maps are drawn that way, but we give them a reduction and or then you mess with the location code, right, for a busy road, or you give the whole road a different, you can give it I guess we can't, Ross would have to talk about that because site indexes are usually for a whole street. They're not just usually for a house where whatever that one adjustment is we do on a house if they have wetlands. The site index code, I think, is specific to the property, where there's other places where we make adjustments on that. So I don't remember what we did with the ones over there, but we did have a few on, on the very, I guess I would say the very eastern end of east of North Benson. So you could look back and see. At the end of the day, it's about getting their value correct and then hopefully fixing the field cards so that, in 4 years, they don't come back again because they bumped up because we just gave them a flat, one time. We gave them a reduction, but we didn't fix anything having to do with the site index. So we're, we saw it.
I'm sorry, Kathleen, go ahead. My mistake.
No. I think that's it. Thanks.
And I guess, to Peter's point that he made at our first meeting, this is exactly the kind of thing that seems to aggravate Peter, and it aggravates me. I think I have my taxes all set, okay? And then I find out I'm going to have to pay more because we've overturned these decisions. We've granted appeals to people who feel that they were overly taxed. And I understand his thinking about that. But what I had said to him was, if anybody remembers, I said, well, if it was done right in the first place, you would know what you were going to pay because you wouldn't have to worry about that. So I guess my point about that is, the people, for example, Tunsis Hill is a perfect example. There's people there who are the least able to pay, and yet we've extended a neighborhood and encroached into Tunsis Hill with a neighborhood that's far more valuable, where prices are higher and taxes are going to be higher, and now these poor people are paying for that. Why is the model correct? It's not correct. It's not all wrong, but parts of it are wrong. But how did this model come into, who did the modeling, and how did it ever happen? That Tunsis Hill is now not Tunsis Hill, and that Mill Hill, with a completely separate zip code, a Southport zip code, which any of the realtors will tell you adds value and adds money to the price, extends to Mill River Road off of Duck Farm Road. How did that happen? That's nowhere near Southport. If you want to say it's part of Greenfield Hill, I would argue it, but I could see it. But I don't think it belongs with Southport. That model's wrong. How did we get this so wrong if this is supposed to work? It's not working for the people of Fairfield. It's working for the model. But that's not my concern. When the model was done, does anybody know when it was done? Who did it? Does anybody, the person who did it, who designed it? And were they even aware of the streets? The map has no streets on it. Do you even know what street you were cutting the line on? No, because there's no names on the streets. If I put my finger on that map and point at somebody and say, hey, what street is that? I bet you they can't tell me because they don't know. But they made a map out of it, and they changed people's values out of it. So I think that's my whole issue with the whole thing. Yes, we have to have a system that works, but I don't think this one is working for the taxpayers of Fairfield. And Helene, to answer your question, again, I think somebody already answered it, but I'll say it again. I have every intention of looking at these neighborhoods, and if I don't believe that that's where that neighborhood is, I have no intention in saying that I'm looking for comps there. Everybody can do what they want. That's just my feeling. I am not going to validate incorrect information at the taxpayer's expense. That's all I have to say about that.
It's important as we go through this process. I think it's important for us to make note of, if there's a whole street or a couple of streets that we feel are in the wrong neighborhood, we should make note of that. That should be corrected.
We should. Yep. On the last year's list. Now, I'm saying they're wrong from my perspective. It may not be wrong according to the maps. There are 65 homes on there that are not in the right place, that are not given the right neighborhood number. 65. Now, I know that's out of 400 and something residential appeals. That's not that much, but that's 65 people that are not coded correctly. And that's only what we know about. We don't know about any of the others. If the street has 50 houses on it, then that's 50 more people.
We really need a street list. We really, really need a street list of all these neighborhoods.
Yeah.
You know, think about it. If you were looking for your child or somebody wants to know what school they're going to go, their children are going to go to in the town, there is a street list available of the grammar and the middle and the high schoolers. Why don't we have a street list of the neighborhoods for taxing and for values? Why don't we have that?
That's a good one. I don't know. That's a good question, Judy. Why don't we have that? Yes, we should.
We really
Maybe we can
need
look
to
into
have
that.
that because that's the way we can fix it.
Well,
This is Kathleen
in
Ross.
answer,
Is
in
that
answer to your question, Paulette,
property?
sorry.
And who's talking? One at a time. Wayne?
I was just going to say, in answer to your question, the last time I was on the board, I don't remember this having a neighborhood code. Somewhere in between when I left and now it appeared. If
When
you
was that? When
recall,
were you last
Paulette,
on the board?
when Katie and you and I were on the board all those years ago, there was a street neighborhood. There was a code with streets. And it was
Yes, there was.
terrible.
You're right.
And we basically threw it in
Yeah.
the garbage and said, let's start all over
Yes
again.
and no.
This is
Yep.
is all wrong. I don't know where that came from, but we just discarded it.
I do remember that. I remember that distinctly.
Mhm.
We were like, yeah, no, that's no good. So, yep. When were you last on the board? Was it 2015?
I think so. No. It was like two or 3 years ago. I was on
Okay.
for two terms.
Okay. All righty. Well, I guess, does anybody have any other questions about that section of the field card?
Oh, yeah, I have one more question, and I apologize because I haven't opened up all the emails that were sent. It's just been a busy week, so I will look at it. But and I think Ross said that he sent in the paperwork or the documents he sent was included the neighborhood codes. Does that also include the adjustment for each of those neighborhoods?
Actually, I have that if you want it, Helene. I don't know. I don't know what Russ sent. I didn't look. It might. I have no idea. You can ask him. But I know that I made myself a list just so it'll be easier for me to figure it out.
All right, because I did go to that website, but I'm still not finding it. Oh, Kathleen. Okay, I'm gonna look here.
Okay.
This is Kathleen. They're all under there. They just kind of start with the word land. If you look at the drop-down box, you know, they're kind of grouped together. So the one I just put in the link, for example, is land NBHD table. So that's the neighborhood table. And then Ross can probably tell you the name of the other table that has the adjustments that go with those codes. Oh, actually, it's in that table on the right-hand side. The link I sent you, I think on the right, the land adjustment values, see over to the right if you click on that last link.
Oh, yeah, I see it now. Yep.
Yes, South Part C 2.5, yeah, so the code's in that physical table. And the commercial are all down the bottom. There's some other ones.
Okay, thank you.
But this is,
Got it, Helene?
these were in Ross's, Don Ross's table when he sent us way back when. I have those from, I was on in 16. So, you know, these neighborhoods have been around forever. And I think what they did with the last reval is add a few more and break it up so that, you know, so that it would make a better model. I think they added, was it Sant Mortar, or I'm trying to think of the name of that neighborhood that they added over, you know, not Lake Mohegan area. What am I thinking of? Anyway, Lake Hills. Thank you. That's a brand new neighborhood this time, 75. And I think they broke out some of the beach, Fairfield Beach and Roland Row. Wasn't that new this year? The Sherman, I think, got broken out. Maybe I don't remember.
There is
a few other things.
We had with Ross was we had streets. They named streets. That list that he had with Don Ross.
It's probably still
I
in.
remember that from a long time ago.
Probably just something to print out a vision. Probably some streets have more than one neighborhood code associated, like North Benson, for example, right, has different different areas have different ones, so it's not a one-to-one ratio. One side of North Benton's in one neighborhood and the other side's in another, but.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what comes up, but I guess I just picked on the university area because I lived there and I just thought, I don't want to pick somebody else's neighborhood, but, and the reason I picked Tanica Park was because it's a special neighborhood that's in that east of North Benson neighborhood, but we have Winton Park in the university area with similar things, very similar things about them, except I don't think they have, I know they don't have a tennis court, but they have some similar, there's so many similar things about them, and yet they're there'll be two different neighborhood adjustments, and I really don't understand why. So, and I don't think I ever will, because I don't see where that makes any sense, but that's just me. So as we go along, I guess people get used to working with it, and we'll see. And if we think something's not right, we'll have to make a change if everybody votes to do that. Any other questions for Ross? Ross, do you have anything else to share with us?
No, just a request that and a reminder, I sent you an email, Paulette, about the schedule. There was a couple of mixed ones and a couple of duplicates that just need to be cleaned up.
Yeah, I'll try to do that later. I'm not sure I can. I may have to turn it over to Katie Gusson to work on. She had offered to help me because tomorrow I will not be available. I won't be available for the next few days to do any work. So to get it done in time for you to send everything out, I'll see if Katie, if I can't finish it tonight, I'll see if I can have Katie help me with it.
There's not that many, just a few.
Yeah, I noticed there weren't that many. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Okay, next on the list is appeals. Just to review with
Kathy, I have one question for Ross. Do we have a clerk this year? Do we have like the BA clerk email set up and or the phone number set up like we did last year?
No.
Okay.
No, though.
So it's yeah,
They'll
I
just
think
have to
we
call
handed
the
that out
office. They'll have to call the office. There's, we're dealing with, quite a small number this year. It's actually the lowest number we've had in 5 years.
Wow. Okay. Okay, appeals. How to conduct fact finding. I just wanted to share with everybody. Some people everybody, except for one of us, everybody's been on this before, done this before. But just to remind people that what I found helpful when I was doing it, and I just thought, I thought of this after last year, so I didn't get a chance to practice it then, but I plan to do it this time, especially after Greg's presentation. How to conduct fact finding or hearing. I think that if you're dealing with an appraiser, I think it's very responsible and certainly acceptable to ask him why he chose those comps. And we touched on that. And although they're subjective and there's many reasons, I think it's important to ask him why those. And the reason I say that is because after we finished our work last year, I spoke to somebody who had their appeal denied, and they had presented an appraisal. And so I asked the appraiser, it was a difficult property on Fairfield Beach Road on the water side. So I asked the appraiser, why did you, the board had a problem with some of the comps, and I didn't, but some people did. What made you choose the comps you chose? And he explained how it was a difficult property and that part of the problem, one of the biggest problems for him, was that the property was so narrow and there was so little beachfront, across in width, that he tried to pick something that was very similar to that. And that's where he kind of like draws a line in the sand, drew his line in the sand and said, these are difficult properties. There aren't many. This one has the same shape and the same beach frontage. So let me go with this one and make adjustments from there. So I think, and I don't know why, I don't remember why this was denied. Obviously, people didn't think that the appraisal was good enough. But I think that's important to know why they chose what they chose. I think that'll help us in the long run in making our decision. If they can clearly tell you why they chose that, maybe for that reason. Well, there were several comps, but I had to pick the one that had the same beach frontage because that's one of the most important and valuable factors in this particular property. So I think that's a good place to start to get them to tell you that. I don't know what quality and type is. I don't remember putting that there, so I'm going to skip that. Logistics for hearings. Now, we're doing them all virtual, and I spoke with Dave Kelly, I think it is, in IT and with Jennifer Carpenter. So I now have, what's going to happen is, the way it's worked out, I started the schedule, we'll have it completed tonight or tomorrow morning. But the way it works out is that there are we have 4 conference bridges assigned to us for the whole time we're doing hearings. And 4 different people will be assigned to that one, so they always use that one. So we'll do the hearings that way. There'll be the ones at night, they'll share them with the person during the day because they'll be done at different times. But that's how they're going to handle it. That's only for the hearings. For the deliberations, we'll do what we did last year, WebEx, on camera, so we can take votes and everything else. So that's how they'll be done. I'm sure we'll get people that will be fighting and kicking if they didn't get to come in person. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is this year. We're not doing them in person. I changed the time allotments to 20 minutes from 15 minutes because I had people complaining last year that, to me anyway, that they didn't think 15 minutes was sufficient because it took the board members so long to introduce themselves and give their spiel and swear them in that they had 8 minutes left. So that's not really fair. So I think that we could give them a little bit more time so they still have to have a full 15 minutes, and we should maybe move along with ours. I don't think they have to know every detail of our lives, just who we are, what we're doing, and then the swearing in. Now, swearing in this year, because they're all virtual, swearing in is typically, it's just going to be done, everything's being recorded. So when you swear them in, their response of I do or I will be recorded. So there will be no signing of any papers. No one will sign in. And this is per the town attorney. He was the one who suggested it. So we're going to go with that. Remember that attorneys representing taxpayers do not have to be sworn in at all. Officers of the court do not get sworn in. Appraisers do. Let's see. Phone calls, how it's going to work is with the conference bridge, when the taxpayer gets their notice of the date and time of their hearing, they'll be given a phone number, which is the conference bridge, to call in at the proper time. So you don't have to call them, they will call you. Let's see, and just remember that you have to, I guess it gets recorded. Yeah, it gets recorded when the phone call starts. We talked about WebEx, access to records. All the records are online now. Years ago, we used to have to go in the office and get them and use them and then bring them back. You really didn't have a chance to spend a lot of time reviewing them, or if you had questions, you had to go back and get them. All of them are online under the Board of Assessment Appeals, documents and stuff. If anybody doesn't know how to get to those, let me know and I can direct you. But I think most people have tried it. But it's pretty neat. The person's appeal is in there. It's got the number, the name, and their documents will be in there. It makes it a lot easier for you, for the hearing officer, but also for the rest of us when you're presenting. We could be looking at that this way. If you have any questions, it makes it a lot easier than asking if we could see the file. So that's a plus. I think that's it. We are not allowed to vote on minutes tonight, and we cannot introduce new business because of we made a change in the date of the meeting, because apparently we have to have the date published 30 days in advance to give everyone a chance to put it on their calendar. I'm sure there's so many people that wanted to listen to this tonight. We wouldn't want to leave anybody out. So because of that, the FOI rules do not allow us to introduce new business or to vote on minutes. We can thank so I don't know when we're going to do that, because I guess we'll have to do it at one of the deliberation meetings where we'll vote on the minutes. Thanks to the government's overreach into everybody's business and private lives, we will not be able to do that this evening. So although I thought it was a free country, it's not really as free as I thought it was. We are under the strict thumb of the government regulations. Let's see what else. I think that's it for me. I can tell you that the way the yes, I could, because we're talking about the schedule. It looks like, because there are so few, like Russ said, it looks like we're going to be able to get the hearings done in 2 days, 2 to 3 days. So most of us will be doing it 2 days in a row. And Peter, because of his schedule, he'll be doing some on the 3rd day. So deliberations, hearings will be the 7th, 8th, and a couple for Peter on the 9th. And deliberations will start on the 9th at 5 o'clock. Yeah, 5 o'clock. So and then it'll be every Monday through Thursday until the end of the month. We don't need to do Saturdays because we don't have enough appeals to have to bother people on their weekends off, for those who get them off. So that's it. Anybody have anything that we've already talked about that you want to say something about?
This is Kathleen. I just wanted, I just wanted to ask about process because so last year we had 2 phones. We called them when we were done with our previous hearing. So now they're going to be calling into our WebEx. Will they be automatically, we'll be running the WebEx and muting other people coming into our calls, or like, how's that going to, I'm just trying to figure out
the way,
how's that
yeah,
go?
that's a very good question. The way Dave Kelly described it was that they get the number and then they'll be on the line. So they just call in at their time and we answer the phone and that's it. I will verify that again, but that's all he described to me. So I'm not familiar with the system, so I don't really know, but that's what he explained to me. I'm not getting real clear directions from, Dave was pretty clear, but I'm not getting exactly the clarity that I thought I would get from people that are helping us out. So I need to go back and recheck that.
Yeah,
But what I know so far is what I told you.
Yeah, he lost 2 employees last Friday, so I'm sure he's super short right now. But so, for example, in our call tonight, right, like when people are calling in, it just says call-in user 7. So you have no idea if you've got 2 or 3 people on your line, which one is your next appellant. So that's why last year
I know what you're saying.
we went with 2 phones and we just left one on and it recorded the whole time. And we called them on the second line when we were ready to call them. And then if they wanted a conference in their attorney or their broker, they did that on their end and got their broker on the other line. But it stopped people from interrupting, you weren't getting like beeped in and then having to say, oh, wait a minute, someone else is on the call and muting them. They also didn't need to know what number to call. So there was nothing in their notice. They didn't have to give them a phone number. So if somebody's sick one day or we move them around, we don't want them calling a number that, nobody can pick up. So it'd be my recommendation. They set it up great for us last year. They gave us a computer there so we could monitor the line on the computer. And I mean, Judy did them too, right? You just go in, you turn on your recording, you say what date and time it is, and then you just pick up the other phone, keep it on speaker, and you call the person and then they hang up. And I thought the phone the ones that recorded that way last year worked really well. You just need quiet. That's, we tried last year dividing one room in half and it was way too noisy, but as long as the rooms are separate from each other, you can go back. I just thought that was a lot smoother than being there by yourself, trying to manage people calling in when you don't know who they are because it comes in on the screen and you can't see a name.
Well, I think we're going to have glitches.
This is Ross. I'm looking at the letter that we revised, and the letter notifying them of a meeting says that a member of the board will call you to review your information.
And that's what I thought we were going to do. And now Dave's telling me that they're calling us.
Okay, so we're going to need to modify the letter.
We're going to modify the letter. Yeah. Unfortunately, I won't be modifying that. I'm going to have somebody do that. So.
Yeah, Paulette, I would, I'm happy to reach out to Dave and I think it's way better the other way. I know we don't have a lot, but they set it up fine last year. There's no reason they had enough equipment. There's no reason they can't give us the same station this year. That's what I would recommend.
Okay, then I'll have you do that because I cannot do it. I will not be available. There is no way for me to make myself available.
Yeah, and this is Kathleen. If they set them up the night before, we can just go and practice. I'll go over and practice on them. James Ryan, I think, helped with it last year. I know Tom, unfortunately, was the one who was let go last week, so he's no longer there to help. But Dave set it all up, gave us the numbers, and it worked. I thought it was pretty smooth. So, we went back and forth between in person and on the phone. But I don't know how Peter or Judy felt about it, but I wanted to be able to focus on the person I'm talking to. I don't want to have other people jumping in and out of the call, and the public was muted on the main line. So the public couldn't jump in either because the public can also listen. They have to be able to listen. So they can be on the call too. So you could pick up the public and not pick up the client, not pick up the client, or whatever, the appellant. So. I'm happy to reach out to him. I'll
Okay.
see if there's a reason.
Right, yeah,
We
see what you
really
can do
should
with
do
that.
a practice run, and especially if people they're gonna call in, we're not gonna know. I kind of liked being able to call them last year. Pardon me, I got a frog in my throat. So I think we need to make sure that we're doing this correctly. That's it. Do practice.
Yeah, this is Peter. I just wanted to say, I mean, I think the calling in or us calling um, the homeowners would be a better, you know, we ran into problems last year, technical difficulties, got behind, you know, that would you know, make it so that we're at least, you know, reaching out to people. I mean, we can always contact them, have someone contact them and say, listen, you know, they're running, you know, 10 minutes behind, something like that. But and I just want to express my concern. I mean, I'm just, again, if it was a perfect world and everything went off without a hitch, um, you know, not having those signed documents would be, and I know the attorneys, you know, Attorney Baldwin has ruled on that or has spoken on that, but um, it just seems, you know, what's going to happen when we, you know, drop a call and someone's, you know, not sworn in, you know, technically not sworn in because it didn't happen because there's no record of it. So I'm not really sure why we're, you know, abandoning that, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it.
Well, I don't know either, Peter. I will tell you that I'm out of time arguing with the way things are done. I don't have any more time for it, and I don't have more patience for it. So that's what he decided, and I guess that's what we're going with because it seems that's the way it is. So I don't think we have a choice. I can certainly ask again, but you know, I think that again, you know, the government tells you what to do when you do it. So I think that this is the way they want it. But I will take another shot at it and see if there's anything I can do. So.
This is Kathleen,
Kathleen,
too. I
if
just
you
wanted,
could-
to mention to those of you who haven't done hearings in a while, we have a couple of things. For the hearing minutes, we have a minutes sheet, and it's, I think Ross will do it again this year. It's pre-printed with all the information on it, what their ask amount is, who's supposed to be showing up, the property address and all that. So when you confirm that with them on the phone, if on the sheet you write down, you know, if it's a different person who ends up being there because they hired their attorney, if you know, we need to keep a record of who actually is on the call, which could be different than the person who sent in the forms. So just cross it out or circle the amount, or if they change their ask amount, which they often do in their hearing, jot that on the sheet, and then we use those sheets to create hearing minutes. And then you don't have to leave all your notes in the assessor's office. In the past, we always had to leave all our handwritten notes there because that was the only, you know, that's the only thing that could be used for the minutes. So I thought that those are helpful last year in taking a quick, you know, knowing who was there and getting it in writing so that in case it's a different person. And then also the note sheets too, then you can take those with you and you can keep them. They don't have to become part of the public record because you already did that by, you know, documenting who was there and how much they asked for.
Okay. All right. Well, Kathleen, you can talk to Dave Kelly. That would be great. I was planning to do this from home because we were doing it on the phone, which he told me I could do, but now it doesn't sound like it if we have to have 2 lines and a recording and all this stuff. So I'll have to ask him. Well, I won't be asking him. I won't be asking him until the 1st. So anything you can find out would be helpful. And I would say to communicate with Katie and Helene if you find anything out. I probably won't be available to speak to anybody until either Saturday or Sunday.
This is Ross. I'll need to know before that so that and have the letter modified so we can notify them. Letters have to go out by the 1st.
Okay. I'm glad that I spent days on this for no reason. When I could have been getting ready for something that's way more important, but that's okay. All right, so I guess, I'll talk to Katie later and, I'll see what we can come up with. I realize that people are short-staffed, but nobody's in a big hurry except for us. So. All right. Do any of you, let me ask you this. Oh, I don't know if I can say this, too out of saying anyway. Do any of you, instead of doing this by phone, are any of you interested in doing it in person?
I don't know if you can see, Paulette. Do you have
Oh,
a
yeah,
camera? Do you
Paulette,
just
you're not on the screen. We all have our hands up. I'd
I'm
rather
on the
do it
screen.
in person if we could.
I would too.
You all want to expose yourself, you all want to be exposed to COVID. That's good. Okay, well, I won't be, but that's fine. If you all want to do that, it's fine with me. I don't, it's up to you guys.
I just think it's going to go faster if we're in front of the people and we can just exchange the documents and just have frank
Well,
conversations.
it does go faster.
Yeah.
It goes way faster. There's no doubt about that. So, all right, well, then I guess then the thing to do is to change our mind and just say that we're going to do them in person, unless, of course, somebody requests a phone one. I think we have to offer that to them.
Yeah.
And I'll have to figure out what I'll do because I will not be meeting with them in person. So.
Just won't kiss and hug them anymore.
I'll have to
I used to kiss and hug them, but
figure-
not anymore.
I didn't even want to be near them during flu season, never mind COVID, so. All right, so I guess that'll be the thing. Katie, Ross, can we switch or is it too late?
I don't have an answer. Jim Ryan reached out to me yesterday, and then he spoke with Jen Carpenter and Dave Kelly, and I believe he was told, he's all set, nothing to do. So I don't know.
Nothing to do, okay.
Yeah, well, he was told you're not meeting in the building, so he, did not make any preparations.
Right, and I don't blame him, but, I was told that this is all we had to do, and obviously this is not the case. And now here we are at the last minute, we have to come up with a plan that's going to work, and now I'm concerned that, if we have to set all that other stuff up, maybe it's not going to work so easily. Because if we do it in person, what do we need? Just a recording device?
How many people are having hearings at the same time?
4.
So there'll be 4, we'd have to have 4 simultaneous stations set up.
Okay.
But I mean, wouldn't we need that either way? Because I was my understanding this phone bridge thing was happening at the town hall. So whether we're there meeting with them or we're there on the phone, we need to be there and you need the space for us, right?
Well, it was my understanding that nobody was coming to town hall,
Oh,
and it was going to be done strictly on the phone.
I mean, I'm
wasn't-
okay with that too, I guess, in the interest of getting it done.
Well, I don't want to call them on my personal cell phone. Personally, I don't have 2 lines either. My house line doesn't even work anymore. So you need 2 lines to make phone calls and to record, right? Unless they're calling my cell phone. I would need 2 phones at home to do it at home.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yep.
they've got some time and, we just have to get the notices out by the 1st. It doesn't mean we have to have their hearings. So if we can get an answer in 48 hours, how soon can you guys get us set up? If we're not doing hearings until the 7th or the 8th, and we only need it for 2
We
days,
have time.
maybe we take with hearings and we only do 2 rooms, or if they can't get us 4 rooms. I think that's what they can and can't do for us. And look, there's this is a process that has to happen. They supported us last year with 650. It should be a no-brainer for them to give us, to set it up again. They know how it works. They did it last time.
Okay.
So I would,
It's
the first
good to say, Black. Hi, I just want to go on record and say, hey, you know what? I'll defer to what the majority wants. So if the majority wants to do it by phone, I'm okay with that. If you want to go into the town hall and do it that way, I'm okay with that. I just want everybody to know that I'm flexible. It's for whatever. Okay? That's
Thank you,
it.
Judy. Thank you. So we'll do that. Well, Kathleen, if you could work on that, that'll be good.
yep.
If we can get 4 rooms that are up for 4 people, And that's it. I'll be back on the 1st. So that'll give us a week to iron out anything that has to happen. But Ross has to get this stuff. So see if I can finish that tonight.
Yeah, most importantly, we need to
All right.
revise the letter so that it's setting the expectation of the appellant, whether they're going to get a phone call, come in person, or be called.
Okay. All right, I'll have to figure that out. Well, they're gonna have to come. It looks like they're coming in person because that's what everybody seems to want, and that's fine with me. And it seems like it would be easier. So just send a letter that says they're gonna come in. I'll figure out something for myself.
What do
Just
you
get in
say
another
to
room.
ones that don't want to come in, Paulette?
Yeah, I guess they can have a choice. It all depends, I guess. See, if we do that like they did last year, there weren't many people that didn't want to come in, right? I mean, there weren't that many people that wanted a phone hearing.
This is Kathleen, right? About 85% of them came. They wanted to come in. I think if I remember last year, the letter said you are required by state statute to appear in person, and then we asterisked that and said, due to COVID or whatever, you can request a phone hearing. Just call the assessor's office, or I think we had a BAA clerk line. They called or emailed and asked for a phone hearing, and then the spreadsheet was just changed. Because when we came in the day, you had your documents, so you knew whether they were getting a phone call or whether they were coming in. And so we left it up to, we assumed one, but we allowed them to call and do the other. So that's how we did it last year. We don't have, and there's a decent number of personal property in there, and there's some commercials, I guess, that we don't even need to hear. So we're not talking about
we're not doing those.
People. Mm-mm.
There was, I think, 11 or 12 commercial real estate that were over $1 million assessed.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
The personal
They're not
property
coming in
you'll
at all.
have to hear.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll do them. I guess the letter that they got from last year, I guess we should use again then, Ross, and let them decide if they want to do a phone thing rather than come in. Otherwise, they're coming in.
Okay.
Okay. All right, that's what we'll do. We'll see how many people choose not to come. All right, Kathleen, if you can work on that, and then I'll finish working on the schedule, and we'll be all set.
Yep, happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else? Let's see. I don't think so. I think that's it. Okay, I think that is it. All righty. Okay.
Kathleen, there's 2 more items on the agenda. You have deliberations, procedure, and Robert's rules. Did you want to?
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Yeah, real quick. We talked about we just talked about the deliberations procedure. We'll go to the in-person, except for people that don't want to do that. And then the Robert's rules, small boards. We talked about that once before. That's what we're going to use. And basically, it's just that we don't have to have a second. That's the biggest thing. And we don't really have to start with the way we had to start last year with that crazy system of I make a motion that we grant this appeal, and we haven't even discussed it yet. So I think what I'd like to do is go back to the way it used to be, where the chairman just says, okay, appeal number 1, so-and-so, and you do the appeal. And then when you're done, we had a lot of interrupting last time. I wasn't keen on that either. When the person who's presenting the appeal is finished, we'll ask questions and discussion, and then we'll take a vote. And it'll be, all in favor, whatever, and that's it. We do not have to have a second. So that should move us along a lot faster. Basically, all the other rules apply, the courteousness, things like that. But those were the main issues with the Roberts rules for small boards, just to make things less cumbersome for a small group of people, so that their work is not impeded by the tedium of the procedure. I think that's all I wanted to say. Anybody have any questions about Roberts rules for small boards?
Yeah, you had mentioned at our planning meeting that you were going to send something out about the small rules, like some literature.
Yes, I can send that. I'll have time to do that. Yep, it's like 4 things. I can send that out. I can do that before we meet for our first meeting.
Okay.
Our
Thank you.
first deliberation meeting is what I mean. Okay. I think we can adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I can't see anybody.
Aye.
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 I don't think there's going to be anybody opposed. Okay, we'll adjourn the meeting at 7:08 PM.